tell me, how many are there?
Tell me.
1, 2. 1, 2. Finish that snack up, please. Come on. We've got to go out in a minute. Anina, hurry up, please. Turn round, sit down. Come on, turn round, eat up your snack and drink your milk.
How many?
2. Just put them in your mouth. How am I going to get my assignment done? It's got to be in tomorrow. Oh, you are a naughty girl. You never clear up anything. You're always interrupting me. I can't concentrate. I'm trying to do my reading. You always leave such a mess. Look at all this food and these pens. You never clear up at all, do you? I can't get my work done. Oh no.
Is it dripping?
Yes, it's more than dripping. It's boiling over. Look. Hello, Madeline. It's Chris here. Look, I'm sorry to phone you again, but I just don't think I'm going to get this assignment done by tomorrow. Everything just keeps going wrong. I can't really concentrate on it. I haven't even finished the reading yet. Look, I'm so sorry.
Students in open learning can face all kinds of difficulties apart from just understanding their course. The process of helping them through such difficulties is known as counselling. So what's counselling all about? I asked an experienced Open University tutor counsellor to tell me what she thought.
Well, the longer I work for the OU, the more convinced I am that many of the reasons why students fail or withdraw are non-academic, such as lack of time and motivation, domestic circumstances, anxiety about study and so on, all the problems that can affect adult students. In addition, students or applicants often require help with career and course choice and so on.
So how do you help students make choices and overcome problems?
Well, in lots of ways, but I think counselling covers them all.
Counselling then consists of a range of activities, but the three most important are informing, advising and exploring. Informing is simply answering a direct inquiry with a piece of information.
Can I put this assignment in a few days late, please?
A straight question, a straight answer.
Advising usually means recommending a particular choice out of several facing a student.
I've got to have an operation next year. I'm wondering whether to drop both courses or whether just to go for half a credit.
Knowing something about the courses and the student, I can probably advise her on her options.
Exploring means helping a student make choices or overcome problems which are more to do with the student's feelings than her intellect, or where the student needs to clarify the decisions for herself.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to give up. I just know I'll go to pieces in the exam.
It's unlikely that simple advice from me will help this student very much, but I can help her to help herself by exploring the problem with her.
The difference between these activities is the emphasis and the skills involved. Exploring centres on the student, their feelings, motives and situation. Informing is centred on accurate information independent of the student involved. Exploring needs personal skills such as warmth, openness, empathy and so on. Informing needs facts and knowing where to find them. Advising lies somewhere between the two. But of course there is no rigid distinction between these activities. You might move from one to another in the course of a single session. And sometimes a query apparently needing information may really need exploring, and vice versa.
I'm a bit of a slow reader. Do you have any tips on how I could increase my reading speed?
He may be seeking some simple advice, but it may be necessary to explore the question first to see if there are other issues involved. For example, he may be unable to concentrate because of some work problem.
And that's another skill of counselling, selecting, deciding on the appropriate response to a query. But of course there are other skills.
I think the most important thing you can do for students is to listen to them. And that's not always easy. As a teacher, I'm not particularly used to it. But it always surprises me how helpful students seem to find it just to have somebody listening to them. So often they'll say, once they've discussed a particular problem or difficulty, how helpful I've been. And really all I've done is just listen.
There are a number of ways of helping yourself listen to people better. For instance, there's reflecting, saying back to someone what they've just said, but in such a way as to clarify it and to encourage them to go on.
I'm going to have to give up. There's just too many demands on my time.
As counsellor, you could reply in several different ways.
Yes, time is always a problem.
Or you might say,
You're feeling under pressure to fit the course in amongst all the other things that you have to do.
the second of these responses is a clearer reflection of what the student says and feels. It reassures her that she's been heard and encourages her to go on. Another useful technique is the use of open-ended questions.
Well, I was wondering about taking a music course next.
Do you like music then?
Oh, yes.
That's a closed question, because it just invites a yes-no answer and doesn't really encourage further thought. Here's another approach.
That's interesting. What made you think of that?
That's a better response, I think. It's open-ended and encourages the student to think through the reasons for her choice. Other ways of listening better are using non-verbal signals, such as nodding, leaning forward, smiling, and using small verbal acknowledgements from time to time. Just saying aha is sufficient. Of course, just listening on its own is not enough. It's important to structure a session. The most important reason for listening is to help the student clarify what the issue is.
I've always enjoyed listening to music, but I've never studied the theory.
Uh-huh.
And I really do feel much more confident now I've taken the Arts Foundation course.
And now you feel ready to study the theory?
That's right.
After clarifying, the next stage is to check that the issue is now clear.
So what we're saying is that you really like more information about the theoretical background that you'd need to study the course?
Yes.
And the last stage is to decide on the consequent action, if any, which either you or the student will take.
OK, I'll get some more information about the course. And if you'd like to contact Sam Wilkins, who took it last year, and see what he thinks.
I'll do that, yeah. Thanks
Good.
very much.
Pleasure.
So to recap then, a counsellor has to do a number of things, such as select the best response to a particular issue, inform, advise or explore. Listen carefully using open-ended questions, acknowledgements and reflections, and then try to move forward through several stages of clarifying, checking and consequent action.
This all sounds rather time-consuming, but in practice it's possible to help people effectively in a few minutes. And it's obviously better to spend 3 minutes on a query and deal with it properly than 1 minute and fail to get to the heart of it.
Of course, counselling's not that simple. Your own experience will suggest many subtleties in what we've been saying. But judge for yourself. Here's a couple of more extended sessions for you to compare. Ask yourself how well the counsellor's doing. Is she selecting, listening and structuring? How helpful is the student finding it? Here's scene 1.
No, I'm not getting on very well. I just find it so hard to concentrate.
I think the most important thing is to find a quiet place. Make sure the family knows that they're not to disturb you.
Well, I think I've got that. The trouble is, I still find it hard to get down to it.
Yes, I do understand. I think really you've just got to tell yourself you're going to do nothing else for the next hour and then really stick at it. Try not to get distracted and go downstairs to make cups of coffee or watch your favourite television programme. You know, that sort of thing.
That's one way of doing it. Here's another.
Oh, I'm not getting on very well. I just don't seem to be able to concentrate.
Right. Well, first of all, can you tell me, how do you actually set about studying?
Well, I'm very lucky, really. I have my own study, and the family are very supportive.
Good. So you've got all that side of things sorted out okay. And what happens then?
I sit down with my books and start reading. The trouble is my mind starts to wander.
What do you mean, you feel you're losing interest in what you're reading?
Well, not really. It's just that it doesn't seem to sink in.
Right, you can't remember what you've read.
That's right. And then I start worrying, and that's when I lose track.
Right. I'm beginning to feel that it's not your concentration that's at fault. It could be the way you actually set about reading. Can I make a suggestion to you?
Yes, please.
Right. Well, the next time you sit down with something to read, don't just start at the beginning and read it solidly. Try skimming it first. Look at the section headings and the summaries. Try to get a general idea of what it's trying to say and what it's all about.
Right.
Then there's note-taking. I'll make a few suggestions there too.
In that first dialogue, it seems to me that Madeline tried to give advice before the problem had been fully explored. The second dialogue gave the student more space to explain the difficulty. What was in your mind, Madeline, as you were listening to Sue?
Well, when somebody comes to me with a problem about study, I find it helpful to get them to describe how they actually study. It gets them talking and it gives me a chance to actually analyse the problem. In this case, I began to feel that I recognised the difficulty. Sue seems to be one of those students who's anxious about studying, so she simply reads and reads in an unstructured sort of way and without any clear object in view. So I made a few suggestions based on my experience, and she agreed that she'd let me know how she was getting on, and I said I'd look at the notes that she was making.
Here to end is a dialogue on the phone. Ask yourself, is the counsellor selecting appropriate responses? Is she listening constructively? Does she try and structure the session and move it forward? You might like to stop the video every now and then and ask yourself, why did the counsellor say that? Was that helpful to the student? But remember, this is not meant to be an example of perfect counselling.
I'm just going to have to give up. There really are too many demands on my time.
You're feeling under pressure to fit the course in amongst all the other things that you have to do.
Well, yes. You see, I do this voluntary work for the disabled, and recently I was asked to take on some work for the local residents association as well. So, you see, it leaves me very little time for the course.
Well, yes, I can see that in one way, but you seem to be saying that the course has become less important and that other things have taken on a higher priority. Would that be right?
I suppose so.
Can you remember, when did you actually start to feel like that?
Well, it's since that section on cognitive development. I just couldn't see how it applied.
You couldn't see any actual applications to your work?
No. I feel if I could use it in my voluntary work, even something small, then it would be much more interesting.
So you wouldn't mind the theory, if there was something practical that you could use occasionally?
Yes, I think so.
Look, I don't know the course, but I'm sure your tutor could advise you as to whether something more practical is coming up. Can I suggest that you give the tutor a ring and ask her?
Do you think she'd mind?
No, I'm sure she wouldn't. Would you like to do that, and then perhaps you'd give me a ring back and tell me what you think?
Yes, I will. Thanks very much. You've been really helpful.
That's a pleasure. Bye.